Brent Stinchfield tonight on Newsmax TV. It's real news for real people.
A black man.
It's time for Farm and Range headlines on the Southeast AgNet. I'm Darren Spearman reporting. USDA released their estimated planted acres for the coming year this week, and we're showing on peanuts the acreage will be down 2%, 98% of last year. We're showing Alabama going to 103%, or up about 5,000 acres. Florida would be up about 7,000 acres, or 3%, and Georgia down 2%. Giving them a 98% of last year. Big surprise in the peanut industry. That's just a little bit lower than expected. On corn for all purposes is at 91.1 million acres. That's up less than 1%. All cotton planted in 2021 is estimated at 12 million acres. That's down less than 1% as well. And soybeans acreage is estimated at 87.6 million acres. That's up 5% compared to last year. And all wheat planted is estimated at 46.4 million acres, and that's up 5% from last year. But the big surprise today, the peanut acres will be down 2% nationwide.
Are you stuck inside but looking for bargains on new and secondhand goods? Try HighBid.com, the online auction site for just about anything. HighBid.com offers a safe and easy way to find hundreds of thousands of items for sale every day. From rare coins to fine jewelry, tools to vintage toys, and classic cars to real estate, HighBid.com has it all. HighBid.com makes it easy to find what you're looking for, and the site is simple to use. Come to HighBid.com. That's HIBID.com and start discovering great deals today.
The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service has a program to reward and encourage environmental stewardship for ag and forestry producers. The Conservation Stewardship Program is voluntary. Applicants must be USDA operators. For more information on CSP, visit nrcs.usda.gov. Helping people help the land.
I'm Tyron Spearman for Southeast AgNet.
When it really counts, depend on the source for the latest weather updates, keeping you ahead of the storm. 96.3 FM, 1370 AM, The Source.
Today will be partly sunny with a passing shower or two this morning, becoming less humid this afternoon. High today 73 to 85. Then clear and cooler tonight, low 48 to 54. Plenty of sunshine tomorrow, but a cool day. High on Friday 66 to 72. Partly sunny and cool on Saturday. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Holly Holdren.
On the first and third Wednesday mornings each month at 9:05 a.m., Robert Colin with On Top of the World will be our guest as we learn all about the exciting lifestyle and new home choices available at Ocala's premier adult active community, On Top of the World. From time to time, Robert will bring guests, and you're sure to enjoy our little chats. After all, you deserve the world, and we bring it to you.
Starting Friday, April 2nd at 9 a.m., WOCA and the Early Learning Coalition of Marion County will share information on the coalition, what it does, voluntary pre-kindergarten, and more. Roseanne Fricks, Chief Executive Officer, and Elizabeth Diola, Chief Program Officer, will be my guests. A bright future starts with preparation now. Knowledge is power, and good beginnings equal great endings. We all benefit from that greatness, so be sure to tune in each Friday at 9 a.m. for early learning right here on The Source.
Oh, hey, Grandpa. Oh, hey, Grandpa. Hey, Grandpa.
Yes, buddy?
Can you take me fishing this weekend?
I'd love to.
Have you noticed a change in your hearing over the years? Missing the little things in life? Visit Beneficial Hearing in Ocala today. Their expert team of audiologists will make sure you never miss a moment. Call Beneficial Hearing today at 352-629-4418 or visit them online, beneficialhearing.com.
Sun and Fun's Aerospace Expo is back and better than ever from April 13th through the 18th. It's not just an air show, it's everything aviation in 2021. And you don't want to miss it. Join fellow aviation enthusiasts as we watch mighty warbirds in flight, vintage bombers to modern fighter jets, and our headlining act, the Blue Angels, as they celebrate their 75th anniversary, where they'll unveil their newest Super Hornet. Watch the night sky gleam with our first ever amazing drone light show, aerobatic flyers, a fireworks display, and Wall of Fire. Our event takes place on 1,000 spacious outdoor acres at the Lakeland Linder International Airport, where you'll have a front row ticket to all the action at Sun and Fun's world-famous showcase of the past, present, and future of aviation. Children under 10 are free, so make plans to bring the whole family and experience 6 exciting days of the Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo. For ticket information and show schedules, visit us at flysnf.org.
Thursday, the 8th at 10 a.m., Higher Education Happenings will feature the College of Central Florida's Director of Academic Advisory and First-Year Success, Shanita Hart, who will talk about the process students use to transfer to another university or college after completing their associate in arts degree at CF. To reach your academic goals, the first step is to learn the process to move forward. Again, that's April 8th at 10 a.m. It's educational news from CF and WOCA.
Florida and South Georgia, and my immediate director is Dr. Rich, who's the director of hospice and palliative care for North Florida, South Georgia. I work with a palliative care team, which just means that we have an interdisciplinary team of chaplains, psychology, nursing, and physicians, and we are a supportive service for any veteran who finds themselves with a serious life medical condition, and we just support them in any way we can. But today, we specifically are going to talk about the importance of having an advance directive and what we call is a life-sustaining treatment note on your chart so that your wishes are known when you are in a situation where you can't speak for yourself. So basically, who would you trust to speak for you, and what medical decisions would you want them to make for you if that ever happened?
That usually, like, when I think about that, the first question is my significant other. That would be the person that I would want to be that person. But that's not always the case.
No, that's not always the case. And that's important. And can I give you 2 stories
yes,
of my experience with the palliative care team? And they're 2 pretty common stories. There was a time I met a gentleman named Mike. And Mike was in his 70s, and he had struggled since he was about 14 years old with substance abuse issues, alcohol and substance abuse issues that had caused a divorce and estrangement from his only biological daughter. And so he had had decades without any connection to these 2 people, and he'd been living with his mother, and when I met him, his mother was in his 90s. Well, one day, his mother walked in and found Mike on the floor, unconscious, with a contusion to his head and blood all over the floor. And so she called 911, and he ended up in the hospital. They had to intubate him. He was struggling with the breathing tube going down his throat. He had pulled it out numerous times. He ended up sedated and restrained. And his mother, who was very distraught, as you can imagine, a woman in her 90s seeing her child like this, made some very difficult decisions. She decided that Mike would not want to be intubated, and that she would like, if he were to survive the breathing tube being removed, she would like him to go to a hospice care center. So she makes these decisions only to find out that actually Mike's biological daughter is the one who is legally obligated to make the decision about his medical treatment, or to say that his mother could make those decisions. So the hospital has to do their due diligence to find the daughter, and they could, with the miracle of Facebook, they could actually find the daughter, but the daughter was refusing to respond to any phone calls from family or the hospital. So as a result, an ethics committee had to be assembled. The ethics committee is at every hospital, and it contains, all the many disciplines like the ones I already mentioned: chaplains, psychologists, physicians, nursing, and they decide what's the ethical choice for the veteran. And it turned out to be that his mother should make his decisions, and she was able then to ask for the breathing tube to be removed. He survived that. He was able to go to a hospice care center where he lived about 48 hours. It was enough time for a brother to come from another state And when I talked to his mother, her name was Peggy, afterwards she said that they had, really nice time for about 12 hours. He was conscious again, he joked a little bit, and he passed away then peacefully. But unfortunately, there were about 5 days in the ICU where no one knew what to do for Mike, and his mother was struggling. And that didn't have to happen. So none of us know when we might have an accident, but it's important to have these decisions on the chart. So that's one story. And a lot of us might think, well, I'll never be in that situation. I don't have alcohol and substance abuse issues. I have a will. I've got everything under control. So I'm going to tell you another story. It's also a typical story of a veteran. He's a Korean-era veteran who had a long career. He was an engineer. He worked with locomotives and then with jet engines, and he was very much in control and very successful. He was also proud and independent, like a lot of our veterans are. And so when he realized he had esophageal cancer, he didn't want to talk to his children about that. The main reason he didn't want them to know was because he wanted to live alone. He didn't want to have to leave the state and live with one of his children. A lot of people feel that way. So as a result, he didn't tell them that he had cancer, and he did have a will, and he did have a living will that said what he would want, and he did have his surrogates named. And he had done this with an attorney, and it was in a nice leather-bound notebook in his home. So one day, this veteran's name was Howard, his cancer progressed to a tumor was blocking his stomach, between his stomach and his intestines, which meant nothing could go through. So he was vomiting bile. He's very uncomfortable. He drove himself to the hospital. But of course, he didn't bring that leather-bound book to say what should happen to him. So he was put on artificial nutrition. He was very confused. He was put on artificial nutrition going through his veins and hydration. He was being considered for a gastric tube to help drain that stomach acid, which the medical people didn't really want to do because it's invasive, and he was going to die within weeks of his cancer anyway. So in the meantime, they had a tube down his nose that was decompressing all that stomach acid. That's called a NG tube, and it's not very comfortable. And he was wanting to pull that out. He was also had to be sedated and restrained for that. So eventually, his children, who were out of state, learned of the situation. They also had copies of the will, which is wonderful. They were able to fax those to the hospital. They were signed, and they were able to get to him. He didn't get the G tube. They took out the NG tube so that he was more comfortable. They got him to hospice, no restraints, no sedation. And then he, too, was able to spend a few days with his children peacefully in the hospice setting. But unfortunately, there was a delay again of that care. So what we're trying to do today is just to make all veterans aware that it's important to talk to your primary care team and make sure that your advance directive is up to date with the social worker. And the advance directive consists of who would speak for you if you couldn't speak for yourself. That would be, we call that a healthcare surrogate. And it can be anyone that you trust, and it's somebody that you have spoken to, and let them know. You have to have a hard decision with them and make sure they know what you would want. And it also includes what specific procedures you would want or would not want towards the end of your life. And all of those things can be changed, but it's good to have at least a starting point. And then almost more importantly is something called a life-sustaining treatment note that is also entered in the chart. And this has to be entered by your physician, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant. And they basically confirm what's in your advance directive with the addition of your, what we call your code status, which would be as if your heart would stop. Would you want to have chest compressions to restart your heart?
You know, the amazing, as you're sitting here listening, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk and tell these stories, my father, who was a veteran, he was brutally murdered in Jacksonville. But he lived for 6 days after the beating.
Wow.
And succumbed to his injuries. And if he'd had something like this, they'd have known where my mother was to contact her, because they were divorced at the time. But she was still listed as his emergency contact and all.
Yeah.
But they didn't know this at the hospital because all that was in the room he was renting and everything. But there was no will. Yeah. There was no DNR or anything like that. There was nothing like this. And literally, my mother didn't find out about even the attack happening or that he was in the hospital till after he passed away.
Yeah.
So he spent that entire 6 days of suffering and with this head trauma and everything, and nobody knew to contact his family or anything because he didn't. As I was sitting here listening to you, I was starting to get angry.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting and I was starting to get angry at my dad, and I think he did it out of ignorance. He didn't do it because he purposely wanted to deny us access. He just didn't know that he should have these kind of things in place.
Yeah, and a lot of people just assume the veteran, the
VA,
hospital knows
they
that.
know it. Yeah,
but
you got
they
my
really
records.
don't. Yeah, and
correct.
Your dad represents 70% of the veterans in the United States. 70% don't have these things listed in their chart, or they're not accurate.
It is why my mother, who was not a veteran, but that one incident was why my mother made sure before she got to where she was ill and helped, and she died from COPD, congestive heart failure from COPD, which I don't wish that on anybody, by the way.
Yeah.
But she had a DNR in place. She had a living will in place. She had a will in place. I was the executor. Everybody knew it. I had a copy. Both my sisters had a copy. Her doctor, her primary care physician, had a copy.
Yeah.
By the time we put her in a assisted living facility, she lived there. They had a copy.
Yeah.
So everybody was on the same page.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have known to do that if we hadn't have went through the horror of not knowing my father was in the situation he was in till after he had passed.
Yeah, and what you described is exactly what most civilians need. They need lots of copies, and they have to make sure everybody around them knows everything. And that's always good for a veteran, too. But unlike a regular civilian, veterans have the VA system, and we have durable power of attorneys, which means when you choose that person to speak for you and you have that registered in your VA chart, that goes to any VA.
Right.
So, yeah, it
doesn't go to,
be the
as a
same
civilian, it doesn't go to any hospital.
Right.
The fact that her primary care her primary care physician had it. The hospital, when she got taken to the hospital, when she fell and hit her head, and that's what started the downfall with my mother, when she fell and hit her head. Because we found her and we got the ambulance, we were able to go to the hospital with all her paperwork, give it to the emergency room doctors.
Yep.
Here's what you have to do, the emergency room doctor. Because when they started in, they were like, she was not responsive or anything originally. And they were like, well, we got to do this. We got to do intubate. And I go, no. Here's the folder. There's a DNR in here. If she codes or anything, she's supposed to just drift to go.
Yeah.
And we had that because of the incident we had with my father earlier.
Yeah.
That we were just dumbfounded that 6 days after the fact, they still hadn't contacted, and the VA knew who my mom was.
Yeah.
My mom had been on the record and everything, but because they didn't have the wishes of Dad,
yeah,
and Mom and him were divorced,
right?
The VA was like, well, we didn't know, we didn't have any paperwork saying to contact the estranged wife.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Because if you go by the state of Florida, if somebody doesn't have someone designated, first it is the spouse. But if the spouse is an ex-spouse, then they have to be specifically named.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, they're no longer on the list. And then it goes to adult children, and then to their own parents.
And none of
and
us were adult children at the time. We were all. My older sister was an adult, but she wasn't my father's child. She was his stepdaughter.
Yeah.
So I was at the time 17, and my sister at the time was 14. So they would not contact us either.
Wow.
Because we were kids.
Right.
And they contacted his brother in Wisconsin, or they tried to, but they could never get in touch with his brother in Wisconsin. So for 6 days, he just laid there. And the one thing in my life that that I deal with is what did he know during that 6 days, and did he sit there and suffer for 6 days without his family being there?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that eats at me on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And this was 34, 35, 17 to 54, a long time ago. I can't do the math, it was a long time ago.
That's exactly why each of us needs to have those conversations with our loved ones and designate them so that they're not tormented later.
Yes.
Yeah.
And an important thing is that every time you go to your clinic, make sure your name, your address, your phone number, your contacts are up to date, because sometimes we find that the number is not working, or the number is disconnected, or the emergency contacts are deceased, or they don't want them as an emergency contact anymore because they're divorced or separated or...
That's a good rule of thumb. Anytime you go into the VA, make sure your contact list is up to date. Right.
Yeah, and very often a veteran might be cared for more by a grandchild, but they're not going to come. They're not going to show up as the next of kin. It might be a brother in Wisconsin, and they haven't talked to for months. So
Correct.
It's really important.
Yeah, my father, if he'd have kept up with that, he'd have done it right. He had very close friends in the Jacksonville area that he could have used as next of kin or something like that. Not next of kin, but that he would have put on the list. But he didn't know to do that. And this was, the early 80s. We've come a long way with technology and a long way with informing people what they need to do. A lot of people back then, wills were something that the rich people did. Mm-hmm. If you were a middle class or lower income, you ain't got nothing to give away anyway. What do you need a will for? Mm-hmm. Everybody, I think what you're trying to impress, though, is everybody needs to take these steps.
And it doesn't have to cost anything.
Today will be.
So you can get your advance directive correctly documented on your chart for no cost at all. You don't need a notary. You can just do it with your social worker at your primary care, and that would tell them who you trust to speak for you, how to contact them, and then what you might want. We call them life-sustaining treatments if, for instance, you ended up in an ICU situation. And some of us won't want to make those decisions yet. Maybe you just want to have that conversation with your with the person you choose to speak for you, and you say, in this situation, I would want this, but if it were this situation, I would want something different. They just have to know what you would want.
Right, because when I was with the living will and everything, when it came to DNR, I knew my mother because she had already been 3 different times. They had brought her back from the brink. She was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So then she signed the DNR, and I was aware of it and everything. But, somebody in their 40s is doing this for the first time. They may not want a DNR in their folder.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I still got a lot at 54, I still got a lot of life to live. I may not want a DNR if I get, if I get in a bad accident, try to save me. Now, if I'm 84 and I get in a bad accident or something, I go, if it gets too invasive, at DNR.
Yeah.
I can see how that changes over the years.
It changes.
And that leads back to what you said, Doctor. You need to update your file every time. Make sure it's up to date as it can be.
Yeah. They can just ask for a copy of a printout of the demographics. They can review them, stay there in the clinic, and if you have any changes, write them down, and the clerical staff, they can change that the same day. Mm-hmm. No, without an issue.
We always think about changing our address and our phone number, but we never think about changing. Because I went to the doctor yet. Funny story, went to the doctor 2 days ago, and I hadn't been to the doctor in 2 years. But I went back to my primary care physician, first time in 2 years, and he asked me, is all your contact information up to date, most up to date? And I looked at it and I go, well, no, I broke up with her 3 years ago.
Right.
So my emergency contact on my folder was somebody that I hadn't spoken to in over 3 years.
Correct.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. And another thing that's you kind of brought up the idea of wanting to change your mind. Some people are reluctant to name someone who would speak for them if they couldn't speak for themselves, but they need to really pay attention to that last part. It only counts if you cannot speak for yourself.
Right.
So if you have what we call capacity, if you can make your own decisions, you can change your mind at any time. And even though there's somebody listed there as your healthcare surrogate, they don't override you.
No. No, if you have your faculties and you decide, no, I do want to be resuscitated. I don't want a DNR, Mm-hmm. Well, if you're sitting there and going, hey, if this gets real bad, I know it says that if it gets to the point where I need to be resuscitated, I don't want to. I just had my daughter just had a new grandchild. Mm. I want to be resuscitated. As long as you're within your faculties, you're still in charge of your health care.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're talking with Dr. Jose Torres Rodriguez. He's the Chief Medical Officer at the VA clinic here in Ocala. And Terry McLean, she is a nurse practitioner at the VA in Gainesville, Florida. If you have any questions for him, 622-9622 is the number to call. For any questions you may have concerning this kind of care, because this is something I think a lot of people don't realize that is of vital importance for some serious decision-making that has to happen sometimes with health care. And if you're not capable of making that decision, you need to have documentation that says who is capable of making that decision or what that decision is. If you don't have anybody, you have it written what your decision was before you got incapacitated.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Stand by, Ocala, for double doorbusters this week at Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens in Ocala. Doorbuster number 1, gorgeous Indian hawthorn, not $8.99, just $3.99 this week. Doorbuster number 2, blue Pacific juniper, was $8.99, just $2.99 now. Check this week's big color ad for gobs and gobs of super specials like these. A great selection of 8 or 9 of your favorite butterfly and hummingbird plants, big number 4 size, just $22.99. Bob's own heirloom sun and shade loving camellias, believe me that they were selling for as much as $29.99, but they're yours for just $12.99. And let's not forget spring veggies. They're fantastic. They're still sell for only $3.99 in the jumbo 4-pack. For a page full of money saving, go to Bob Wine's CameliaGardens.net. Then come on out to Southeast 38th Street in Ocala. Daily till 4:30, Saturdays till 3:30. In the same blooming place for going on 70 years.
Dad's service to our country is something we're so proud of. He made a difference and set a great example. Now it's our turn to honor the sacrifices he made for our family and this country. As veteran specialists, Hires Baxley Funeral Service helps us celebrate Dad's life and can help you too. Hires Baxley is here for you during your time of need or when planning for the future. For more information, call 352-484-0891 or visit hiresbaxley.com/choice.
Veterans Helping Veterans USA. Call.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala.
USA Radio News with Tim Berg.
Police in California are expected to update California's worst mass shooting in more than 20 years. A child and 3 others were found dead on Thursday in Orange County. Gunfire ringing out at an office building around dinner time. The suspect was shot and is in custody in the hospital. All eyes will be back on the trial of an ex-Minneapolis police officer this morning. This is the 4th day of witnesses testifying against Derek Chauvin, who stands accused of killing George Floyd last May. One of the witnesses testifying, Cup Food employee Christopher Martin, describes why he believed the $20 bill Floyd gave him was counterfeit.
When I saw the bill, I noticed that it had a blue pigment to it, kind of how a $100 bill will have, and I found that odd, so I assumed that it was fake.
This is USA Radio News.
Rockstar Radio. Did you know this station, this network, is looking for their next rockstar broadcaster? That's right, we are. And it could be you. It could be you interviewing the guests, talking to the newsmakers right in the middle of everything. Have you ever dreamed of being a rockstar show host? Now could be your chance. Together with this station, we'll help you with everything you need. The studios, the equipment, your own producer, a co-host if you'd like, and so much more. Broadcasting is changing. There's never been a need for fresh voices and unique opinions like there is right now. You can do this. Our professional team will guide you every step of the way. Sound effects, show content, building your social network media, and everything you need to be the next rockstar broadcaster. Get all the details. Email bill@rockstar.today. That's bill@rockstar.today. To get started with your own show, email bill@rockstar.today. That's bill@rockstar.today. Don't wait. You could be the next voice for America. Email bill@rockstar.today.
Tune in to The Retirement Referee with Steve Caruso.
One thing we know for sure is that life isn't static.
Sundays at 8 a.m. on The Source, 96.3 FM and 1370 AM.
Veterans Helping Veterans USA. Call 352-433-2320. We help veterans and their families with limited financial assistance, counseling, employment referrals, and a food and clothing bank. You can help in making a huge difference in the veterans' lives we serve by donating food, clothing, household items, or direct financial assistance. All donations are tax deductible. Veterans Helping Veterans USA. 352-433-2320. Thank you for your attention, and God bless America.
You're getting ready to move and you work hard. That's why you call Two Men in a Truck, 352-289-0666. You need pros. Trained professional moving experts to do the heavy lifting for you. That's why you call Two Men in a Truck, 352-289-0666. They care about your things as much as you do, and they do it fast and right. That's why you call Two Men in a Truck, 352-289-0666. Visit twomeninatruck.com and get moving.
2 Men in a Truck.
Gene Powell Pasture Mowing, 352-629-2440. A few of our tractor services include bush hogging, disking, and rototilling. We also have zero-turn mowers for the smaller paddocks, aisleways, fence rows, and lawn care. Fence row spraying is also available for weed control. We are family-owned and operated, licensed and insured, and farm-ready. Howell Gene, Gene, @yahoo.com. 352-629-2440. Gene Powell Pasture Mowing, 352